Thank you for making the time to jump on our Zoom. Today is March 19th and it's approximately 3:12 p.m. This is the Energy Subcommittee, and we just have one bill on for today, and that is House Bill 345. I thought we would go ahead and get started. I know we talked in some detail about this bill a few weeks ago, thinking that, we might be at some point ready to look deeper into it, and that's where we are now. So I thought the bill has had some changes to it because some of the pieces of this bill have gone out in 1532. So I know that Steve has been working really hard since the passage of 1532 on several bills, and this is one of them, just to kind of shore up a couple of aspects of the bill. And to pull some pieces out or just make some adjustments because of 1532. So with that said, Steve, do you want to just, since we talked about this before, maybe kind of refresh everybody's memory, just kind of broad stroke this, talk about the balcony piece, some of the other adjustments, and then we'll kind of go from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. If you don't mind, I'll share my screen just for the visual aid.
Yep.
Okay.
Steve's been busy, subcommittee members, with sticks and figures again.
Okay, that should be showing. Yeah, okay.
And there it is.
So due to comments received about MS Paint, I did do this one in PowerPoint. So it's a little more refined. So in general, the bill, Affordable Solar Act, had two main pieces to it. Last time it had the balcony solar piece, which is sort of like the plug-in panel. That is in House Bill 1532 with some slight amendments. So on the final amendment today, that would not be in there. We're just going to take the subcommittee just take that piece out because it's already been passed.
Right.
The other changes to this are largely, a lot of it is technical. A lot of the amendment language, I know there's a lot of new words in there, but part of that is just adding detail to a very complicated process to maintain the original overall intent, which is to sunset the original RPS for solar and then take alternative compliance payment revenue and use that revenue to fund two new solar programs to fund 2,000 megawatts of distributed generation, which is 5 megawatts or less. Think of that as maybe 20 acres-ish or less, and all the way down to rooftop. So rooftop up to something that's big but not humongous. Okay, and then the other 2,000 megawatts for utility scale, minimum 5 megawatts, much larger scale. So that is the basics of the bill. As introduced, it was also that. However, there were some additional pieces in there. Last time, as far as money that was going into the account, there were other sources. There was a data center revenue stream that has been struck from amendment. And there was also a non-bypassable surcharge to sort of cover any remaining costs to fund these programs over here. That has also been struck from the bill. It's been changed so that what can be used to fund everything else on the right-hand side here is revenue, or is cash flow streams that are already occurring under the existing RPS. So a lot of the language in there is getting at that, to very carefully get at that issue. So you can see money for the existing solar renewable energy credits, which right now comes through your supply portion of your bill. That's where you as a customer are paying it. That will be funneled into this escrow account and be used to hold harmless the existing solar RPS. Those projects that are already in the ground, they were built with the expectation of having renewable energy credit revenue in the future. This basically holds them harmless going forward and freezes it at that amount rather than it continuing to increase over time. The other piece of it is the existing Tier 1 ACP revenue, which has been coming in several $100 million a year and moving forward somewhere in there. Rather than it going into CEF, it gets moved to an escrow account instead, so it stays out of the budget process, so it can't be transferred for general fund purposes or any other purpose. It diverts before it gets to the state budget to the escrow account, and then it funds the utility scale and the distributed solar scale. It can only fund it is set up in such a way that it can only fund what the money is there to do. So it can't overspend. Basically, the money controls the amount of the programs, and if you can't get enough of the programs with the money you have, you don't go any further. You don't grab additional money from ratepayers. You use the ACP revenue controls the amount out, the side out. There are some various true up things in there as well. A lot of language about if it doesn't meet it in 1 year, what do you do the following year to keep things basically on even keel over a 1 to 2 year basis. There's language related to that and some other things as well. But that's basically it as far as overall what the bill does. In addition, there will be one technical one amendment at the end that recognizes that the House just passed House Bill 1532. So this diverts ACP revenue. HB 1532 uses ACP revenue to do two things. It uses it to provide ratepayer relief through the Empower program, $100 million. And then it also uses ACP revenue to provide two $100 million auctions for utility scale solar. Both of those things, this bill with as amended will allow that money to be available, that specific amount of money to still be available for those purposes in House Bill 1532. There's an amendment that will allow that money to still be used, shall be used for that. So that has already passed the House is sort of, I guess, protected or spoken for or accounted for via amendment to this bill, in case you were wondering. So that's the basics. There's a lot of technical detail in the language, but that's what the bill does.
Stephen, you broke up there. I don't know if it was just me, but
Oh, sorry.
I think it was just me, but I heard the first part about it, and then the second part was the funding for the amendment that makes sure there's no conflict with 1532 when it comes to the reverse auctions.
The amendment will require that, I'm still working the very technical language to make sure, but it will require that money be available for the purposes in 1532.
So there's no conflict, because that was the conversations we'd had. Just wanted to make sure there was no
that money
with 1532.
This bill will have a provision notwithstanding, anything else, that money will be available for those purposes in fiscal 27 and 28 as needed. Yes.
So in a nutshell, and then I'm going to call on Delegate Morgan. In a nutshell, the bill sets up this escrow account, puts ACP money in the escrow account, also works on some utility scale and just small distributed solar projects or procurements moving forward via the PSC, and also allows the PSC to make some micro adjustments to different kinds of recs depending on who needs them, and similar to what we did with 1532, and let the experts that know it do those particular pieces. And the big thing, like I said, is setting up that escrow account.
In general, escrow account is a big piece because it takes the ACP revenue out of the budget process. So it is used for purposes of actually building new renewable generation. And then, yes, a PSC, particularly for the distributed solar piece, the smaller one, they'll be able to find, it's in the bill itself, language in the bill itself, set the incentive to be, I believe, just enough and not too much. They'll be able to target incentive levels more specifically to the type of project, the size of the project, because not all solar requires the same level of incentives. And right now, the RPS, there's only one incentive. There's just the SREC, and it's the same, it's a market clearing price. So you get what you get. basically, regardless of how much you need. So some are getting more than they need, and some maybe not enough. So this is it would be a more targeted incentive by different types. For example, a residential rooftop, a commercial rooftop, a community solar, right? It could have a different incentive level to match the finances of the market segment.
And what we need. So like a brownfield or something, we might give a little bit more. They would do that.
On the utility scale in particular, it does allow for PSC can accept multiple bids for multiple projects and at different prices. There's not a clearing price like there is in the reverse auction. So PSC can be allowed to value certain projects or siting in certain areas at different amounts to target
Right.
build out in specific places that may
Right.
be.
Because again, the market is maturing enough that up until this point, it was just like build solar, build solar, build solar. And now we're starting to go, okay, now we've built some solar. Where do we need to put that solar that makes the most sense? So Delegate Morgan, you had your hand raised first, sir. So
Thank you.
please.
So if last time we had the bill, the money was going to be excluded from the CEF so that the executive branch couldn't raid the CEF to help balance the budget like we've done this year. Is that a true statement so far?
That accurately describes the
Current
the
situation.
diversion from CEF to an escrow account. Yes.
Okay, so now in this drawing, will that mean all the tier 1 ACP revenue goes into this non-budgeted escrow account?
Yes. Same thing. That is the same concept as introduced.
So that means okay. So basically, that was like $600 or $700 million last year, if I remember correctly. It's a lot of money.
350, 400, several $100 million. It's a lot of money, no matter what number that we're picking here. It's a lot of money. Yes.
It was a little under, sorry, it was a little under
I
400
had a
million.
number somewhere from somebody that showed me a whole bunch of ACP numbers. So I can't, there's so much confusion in my head right now. I'm just
Right.
trying to.
And Delegate Morgan, if you look at the bottom, and Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the bottom, you'll see where it says various true-up payments. So
I
yes,
see that.
is it over there? But in the case for 1532, where we have the reverse auction and or some other pieces, if necessary, it can move back and forth from the escrow account and back to CEF in order to ensure that those projects or
only for those specific two reasons.
Yep.
It's not a ongoing authorization. It's only for those two things, because the House just passed that bill with two important uses of it and large uses of it too. Right?
Okay, so in 1532 we had a reverse auction, if I remember, because like you said,
Correct.
it's very trying to read through this stuff is pretty. I'm going in Greek again.
It's only 28 pages.
I know it was in the 122 we had a couple days ago. So we had the reverse auctions in the energy bill. Are we doing the same thing again? Are we doing both reverse auctions? 1532 as one, and
This
there's
is not
one,
a
this one?
this one's not a reverse auction.
It's a similar. It's a procurement, but it is not a reverse auction. This is a different type of they are different, but they are, they're cousins.
Oh,
right?
okay,
It's
so
a related it's a related thing, but they're not, it's not technically a reverse auction in this case.
Okay, and then does the escrow money then pay for procurement?
The escrow account will fund the payments for the build out. So there are multi-year payments.
Right.
So in this case, it would be, I believe for the small ones, it's 15 years. And then for the large ones, it's time set by PSC to allow for good financing rates. It's not a specific time. But what happens is, let's say it's 15 years and I'm just going to use $10 a year. You're going to use 10 per second. It's 150 total. You pay the first, you pay the first 10. Let's just say it's the incentive for this one right here, the 2000 megawatt one, that's a 15-year incentive. Okay. 15 years. It's going to be over 15. The award's over 15 years. Assume it's $10 a year for purposes of this is my example here. Assume it's $10 a year. It's 150 total dollar award that we're using here. You give out the first 10 and you encumber the other the remaining amount, the remaining 135. So like you have all the money, You use 1 year's worth and you hold on to the rest to pay it into the future. There is no, I run out of money to pay future bills. You have this is set up to have the money up front, funds the projects it can, and nothing else.
Okay, that's the important part. So it will not eventually, if the procurement, if the procurement's 100 million and they only have 90 million in the escrow account, they can only purchase up to 90 million and the ratepayer's not gonna have to pick up the other 10. Is that right?
What will happen is the 90 million will control how much they can procure. In
That's
that,
what I mean.
in that example.
That's the cap.
The cap is the amount of ACP revenue available to them, to the PSC. It doesn't work the other way around. It works revenue drives procurement, not procurement drives revenue need. It works one way and not the other.
Okay, thank you. I may come back. I gotta keep
Okay.
digesting. Thank you.
Yeah, and Delegate Morgan, I mean, don't think of it so much as a comeback as, we want you to understand it as best you can. And I know it's complicated. Like, I know all of this is complicated. So it's okay. Just think about it and raise your hand again if we need to. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, first of all, thank you for this diagram. It's very helpful. I appreciate all the stuff that you put together like this. So thank you for that. Could I just get a better understanding of when we're talking about that it can fund various different things, in a solar project, what could potentially be on the table there? Are we talking about the panels themselves? Like what all could be funded out of this escrow account?
I would say it would fund the project and it would provide a yearly revenue stream to make the financing for a particular project pencil out. So the project needs X dollars upfront and it's projecting cash flows based on its sales into the future. And one of the other things it can use would be the revenue stream that is provided, the guaranteed future revenue stream from this as an add-on to make the financing work upfront. So that would be how you would think about it. What it does is it helps projects pencil out upfront.
So when we're talking about, no, and thank you, that's helpful. When we're talking about funding the project, we're talking about utility scale here. Are we also talking about potentially funding transmission lines?
I do not think so. Give me a sec, but I believe I mean look up the language on the utility scale solar piece. I do not believe so offhand. If I see something different, I will tell you.
So how would the electrons then get from the panels onto the grid?
They interconnect where it is, and it's not necessarily, that's not a transmission line. The project itself is usually required to pay the interconnection fee. The bigger they are, the larger the fee. That's part of the cost of building the project is they pay the utility to interconnect. There's a whole interconnection process, just depending on how big they are, that they pay. So that's just part of that's a similar, it's a different bucket, but it's the same thing as needing to acquire the land, needing to get the permits, needing to pay your staff, needing to have all the different plans drawn. It's another cost of getting it started and running.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Delegate Naraki, just for your edification, they have to study it. I mean, depending on the size, it might not be, it might be very expensive to interconnect at a certain point. So there's a study that I think has to be done, not only to some degree by the PSC,
bigger ones,
also the utility itself to try and figure out like, okay, what hardware are we exactly going to need to hook up at this particular place? What does that look like?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I certainly appreciate, and CEO, I appreciate that. I have a potentially very large one proposed in my district on some farmland. It's in the middle of a farm. There's no existing infrastructure there, so presumably those electrons have to get to the grid somehow. And so that is one of my concerns with this project. I've got a lot of power line transmission issues in my district, and I'm worried about that element of this. But I guess I'll sit back and listen to the rest of the conversation here.
Okay, feel free to raise up again. Mr. Lopez, I see your hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to address anything that's been said so far, or you're on.
Sure. So actually, I do want to address something quickly with the delegate just said, and I think Ben is also in the line, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. But so normally when you talk about generation, utility scale generation, There's first there are interconnection studies that needs to get done, depending on the level that it is. It's either, the low serving entity, so BGE, think of BGE, PECO, any of these companies, or, if it's very big, it's going to be PGM as well, is going to dictate what type of line needs to go in there. But part of the generation is the step up transmission, substations. So whenever you have that generation, especially let's think about solar, you get a collection point, and that goes into step up um, uh, station. That piece is still technically considered generation. It's up until when you connect into that it becomes transmission. So for your question of what covers on lines and not covers on lines, stuff like that, BGE will be taking care of the actual lines because it's part of the studies that they need to do the interconnection piece of it. But up those lines that go from the solar systems to that bus into it, that's technically generation. So that's where the line kind of is, all right? So hopefully that kind of gives you a little better understanding on the physical pieces of it. I do have a question for Steve, sorry, and I know that we've talked a lot about the escrow and where the numbers are going to go in. But Steve, can you shine a little bit light on I know that the language is legacy and SREX and the percentage of the RPS, how is that going to be impacted? So currently there's a tier one carve out for solar. There's a post 2022 geo, and then there's an overarching tier one number. But now, is it true that the PSC then would dictate not only the legacy number, but the new number to substitute the solar piece of it? Is that how that's supposed to be working?
Yes, that's my
Okay.
general understanding of this. And again, that allows for the ACP revenue to drive the
Mhm.
amount and not the other way around. So again, it limits getting it as close to those percents as possible while keeping it to the four corners of ACP revenue and existing revenue streams related to existing solar renewable energy credits.
Okay.
Basically puts the existing solar into like, amber, and holds it there, holds it steady over time, and then moves on with the utility scale on top.
Yeah, I think that's another important point, which is the bill not only is looking at where the money goes, but also the percentage pieces of the RPS, which does have an impact on the overarching. And Chair, if I just may, I do have one concern from the policy perspective, and that is this escrow account, moving the money to the escrow account means MEA accounts actually, do suffer some numbers. I think that ACP was about on their comments, it was about 350 million on average for the last 2 years, and that's a hole for MEA, which I think that it's something that needs to be thought of as well. How does what impacts that might have within MEA as well? I just flagging that out because I think it's important that we recognize also the impact of moving the money into the escrow account and doing this policy approach to that amount.
Okay. Ian, I see you on the line. From MEA's perspective, do you have a comment that you'd like to?
I mean, I think it's a good question for the committee to think about. Right now, MEA's budget is a little over half funded by alternative compliance payments. Those would, obviously go away under this bill, and the likely impact of that would be that MEA would probably significantly curtail or stop funding, renewable or solar projects, and that the Public Service Commission, through this process, would instead be taking on that responsibility. So I just think it's a policy decision for the committee as to how that, what the right approach there is. I mean, I'd be happy to answer questions, but that's the way I see it.
I think, did we lose him? You're back. We lost the chair for a second.
I think I'm back.
You're back.
Yeah, sorry. Internet just freaked out on me and tossed me off.
You left Ian hanging for a very long time
Sorry, and
before we realized you froze.
yeah,
So just for your benefit, I think it's really a policy call for the committee as to whether, MEA has been funding solar and other renewable projects through grants. And again, moving forward, assuming that the other bill passes through the reverse auction, under this bill, I think that would be phased out. And instead, the Public Service Commission would be shouldering that responsibility.
Right. Okay. I think Delegate Stein, you were next, and then Delegate Boyce. I don't know if I have them wrong, but go ahead, Delegate Stein.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. First, just going back to the RPS. So, we're saying that, I mean, right now the target for solar in RPS is 14% as of a certain year in the future. I forget which year. So we're saying that would go away, and that the solar generated wouldn't be dictated by the RPS or somehow affected by the RPS, but by what can be funded through this escrow account. Is that right?
Sorry. Yes, it's an amount that the PSC would set, and that it is set by what can be generated under the freezing of the existing amounts plus what is projected to be made by what is being built through the escrow account. So the short answer is yes, it is administratively determined rather than a fixed percentage. And just for your own edification, it goes to 14% under current law. Under the bill, this escrow account process over here is about 10 percentage points by itself. So if you add 9 plus fixing it at 9 and adding another 10, you get about 19% percentage points for solar overall when at full build out. So it is
Right now we're at 7.
We're at 8 this year. So and we're heading to, I believe, 14.5 under current law, and under this bill, you would eventually wind up somewhere around 19 to 20 with solar. But that's what that's what this amount of solar at about what it makes per year would be about another 10 percentage points. That's about 10 percentage points overall, long term.
Okay. What about the other tier 1 RPS goals?
They are not changed. So the offshore wind stays what it is, which is again only paid for if the turbines are spinning and creating electrons. Geothermal is left alone, and I believe the rest of tier one sort of floats on top of the administrative ones set by the commission, the solar and the offshore wind and everything related to that.
Okay, so don't we have a goal of, again, this is
roughly 50,
drawing on memory, 50% by 2030?
Yes, roughly, yes.
So that would, and that's the aggregate for tier 1. So, okay, so that would stay in place. Presumably there'd be a larger chunk of that could be absorbed by solar, because you're saying we're probably going to create more solar than 14%.
That was always going to potentially be the case. Once the solar carve out doesn't mean that's all the solar you build. Once if it would grow past the carve out, regular solar would also then start to apply to the regular tier 1, and could get regular tier 1 RECs, not solar RECs. But there is a larger sort of solar specific piece under this than under current law by a few percentage points over time.
Okay. Second question is I'm a little bit unclear about the amount of funding for by ACPs for each of these two buckets.
Okay.
Did you say, Steve, that's $100 million for distributed and $100 million for utility scale?
Okay, so I don't want to conflate anything. Let me address the revenue stream in this, the bill, the green box. Let me address the green box right here. This one, I'll address this. Last
Okay.
year, that was, in 2023, that box is 320 million. In 2024, that box is 365 million. There's no reason to think that that box won't be roughly that amount next year and the following year. That box is going to be heading toward 400 million annually. And that's the amount of ACP revenue.
Right.
And that money will go into here and it will fund these two programs. It will fund new smaller solar and new utility solar. That's what that money will do.
So whatever the ACP amount is, half goes to each bucket.
I don't think it's half. I think it's, I don't believe it's split specifically. There's administrative, I don't think it says must be 50-50. I think there are separate sort of other sub goals going on, and PSC has the flexibility to spend that money to push both goals. They are separate, sort of like separate programs. They have separate things they're trying to meet. So I don't
Okay.
think it's split 50-50. But the ACP can only be used to fund new stuff. It can't be used to fund what is called in this legacy.
Legacy, right.
systems. That's not what happens. It's only the new stuff.
Okay, great. And last question, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. This
Please.
is for Ian. How would this affect MEA administratively, just in terms of your staffing? I mean, I understand the responsibility for the solar programs that you administer would be shifted. I take it that would have an administrative impact as well. Is that right?
Yeah, no, thank you, Delegate. I mean, I think that's true, right? I mean, if you're taking half the revenue roughly of an agency, it's going to have, effects, including, probably contracting staff. I think that would be inevitable. MEA would continue to function presumably based on its RGGI revenue, which is the other half of the CEF that we've talked about. And so I think programs funded from the CEF would continue. But to your point, yeah, I mean, a little over half the revenue right now is ACP, so I think MEA would get quite a bit smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to call on Ben Baker just to address anything from the Public Service Commission's perspective, since we talked with MEA. Ben, do you have anything you want to add as far as how this will affect Ben going once?
Sorry, say it again. My
There you go.
apologies. How will
Go ahead.
how will this impact the agency?
Yeah. I mean, the MEA spoke to it. Did you have anything you wanted to add, or should we just keep moving?
Got it. Well, no, I think we have a fiscal note in that we'll need some bodies and to stand up, effectively bodies and consultants to run the auctions that are envisioned in here. But from a cost perspective, in terms of I would view this more like what's happening with the green boxes here is a shift of who's administering how we use that ACP, and it's limiting what it can be used for. But in terms of administration, yeah, I imagine what will happen is MEAs, while they will decrease in size, we would probably have to increase some in size to facilitate this. I can ask Kathy real quick what we said our fiscal note was. Apologies, I don't know it off the top of my head.
The commission put a fiscal note in for, as Ben was saying, 4 positions within the agency. And then we are going to require $1 million annually for the consultants to run the 2 different programs.
Thank you. Delegate Boyce.
So thank you so much. I think the questions have been answered for me about MEA, which is incredibly unfortunate if they can't continue to do their work for low income residents. So I don't know how we help change that, but that's a bit of a disappointment. How does this bill affect municipalities that own their own utilities, especially as the bill was originally drafted?
Steve?
Oh, everybody's hands up.
Okay. Steve, if you could just
Yeah,
address that
sorry,
one.
I was muted for a second.
Then I want
Using
to call on
utilities,
Dwayne.
I'm not sure I contemplated the utility a municipal doing this. One municipal utility owns generation that I know of, that's Easton.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on what counts as an eligible applicant for the utility scale program. I'm looking to see if there's a reason why they couldn't fit or they couldn't be considered. If PSC has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, why don't I
I
call on
hadn't
Dwayne
actually
while
looked.
why don't I call on Dwayne while you're looking?
Sure.
Dwayne?
You, Mr. Chair. Sorry, to that specific question, Delegate Boyce, I believe anyone that's already having to, any utilities that's already having to get RECs under the current RPS would have to get RECs under this new system. It's not, really changing much. It's just changing how the RECs are allocated. So from a utility perspective, I'm not sure it actually changes much for them. They're just going to procure the RECs that they're told to procure. I did want to comment on the LMI programs that are being run by MEA.
Mm-hmm.
Ian's free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the LMI programs are run through the REGI side of funds. So
Okay.
removing CP funds would not have an effect on the LMI programs.
But going back to the main point, it does have a dramatic effect on MEA and their funding to be able to do some of the work that they do.
Yes, and there
Okay.
was conversations that were had multiple times with MEA about the concern because these ACP funds were not a significant part of their budget 3 years ago. And conversations was had that there was concern that MEA would then try to increase their budget significantly, seeing these ACP funds. And the ACP funds should be used for new generation, not for the programs that MEA is trying to do. And so that is kind of why this bill is in place.
If I may, there's one program funded from ACP that is for low and moderate income. That's the rooftop solar program that was created in the Brighter Tomorrow Act. I think otherwise it's true that most of our low and moderate income, which is not based on solar, it's more about energy efficiency work, that's funded out of the REGI program. Yeah.
Okay. Melanie, I see you had your hand up, and then to Ben Baker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just clarify the issue of the municipal utilities. Under the bill, the utilities will.
It's not just me this time, right?
No.
No, I think we lost her.
Okay, Ben, why don't you go until we
Yeah,
get
I'm basically going to pick up where she left off. So, Delegate, if you were to go to Bill page 8, which I think is PDF page 11 of the reprint that was sent around, and the pages before that actually does the same thing for an electric cooperative. Effectively, what's envisioned here is it's going to be kind of a two-path choice that the munis and the co-op, which would be SMECO in this instance, would have to choose. If they want to continue procuring their own SRECs, the bill gives them the opportunity to do that. And so if they own their own solar plant and they want to use that to satisfy their obligations, they certainly can. It just, the thing that changes is the cost of their alternative compliance payment for SRECs is now based off of the weighted average cost of what you see in the orange and the green here. In order to make sure that their incentive to buy the solar is matching what is happening with the investor in the investor-owned program.
And you
Alternative, go ahead.
Sorry, you said this started on page 8 of the amendments, or
Bill
page?
Bill page 8 of the reprint.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think line 17.
Nothing
9:17.
like all this paper.
I know. Sorry.
It's all right. I got it.
Okay. And so my apologies. So that's one path they can choose.
Yeah.
The
you're
other
right.
path that they could choose is they could say, hey, commission, we're okay if our load is included in the procurements that you're going to run through these various items. And so then they would effectively defer to the commission for what their obligations would be. I'm not sure that I've thought through the nuance of if they own their own solar plant, what happens. I imagine what would happen is they would sell those RECs into the orange bucket here.
Mhm.
So it'd be a little that's me currently thinking about it. If we want to, if there's something to clean that up, maybe. But ultimately, if they choose that path where they say, commission, we just want you to handle it through this procurement process, they can't rescind it later, just because at that point we're
Fair.
starting to make multi-year obligations. So effectively, you can continue for as long as you want to do how you're doing it. It's just going to change the cost of your alternative compliance payment relative to your solar obligation,
Mhm.
or you can ask the commission to do it, but once you ask the commission to do it, you can't rescind it.
Fair. Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Lopez, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one quick thing for Delegate Boyce on the low income and MEA's work. I think MEA mentioned that the majority of that comes from Reggie. I just wanted to remind everyone that in 1532, a language was passed to actually ensure that a percentage of the Reggie money actually goes to the different programs. So I just wanted to highlight that piece as well, because I think it's important that piece is not part of this. It's the Reggie money, and that you guys had protected in a percentage way, so to ensure that money did go to those programs as well.
Okay. Ian, did you have anything or is your hand still up from last time?
Apologies, it was from last time.
Okay. Delegate Morgan, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, couple, please. First, did I just hear somebody say the PSC is going to need $1 million a year to do this? Did I hear that correctly? An additional
Yes, this
$1
is
million
Kathy
for-
Fuston. So the consultants that we would need to engage to run the program, our estimates based on previous consulting contracts we had were $1 million annually.
Okay, so you're going to have to find $1 million out of this somehow a year to add to your budget. Thank you. So from ignorance is bliss, doesn't this change the total RPS policy we had in the past?
It changes a piece of it. If you're asking me generally, it does
The
change
solar piece.
Yeah,
It's a big piece, though. It changes a big piece, it's not just incremental, correct?
It changes about about a quarter of it overall of what's there. It
Okay.
changes the remaining solar piece, 10-ish percentage points of it. They're being changed out of 50.
Right now it's 14.5% is our goal.
In the goals. Okay, so then if I'm a betting guy, the way to make this, the hope here is that the ACP never goes down.
No,
Correct.
we want the ACP to go down.
We're betting on the ACP to remain high in order to do this program, correct?
I think the program is structured to use anticipated high ACP revenues over the next several years to fund
Correct.
these programs.
And
Alternatives, yep, that's it.
Oh, sorry, Stephen. I apologize.
That's it. And it as structured now is designed to tail off or sort of sunset itself as ACP revenues decrease.
And the ACP revenues.
Yes, okay, well, I use the assumption.
Let me jump in here for a second. I think this is important. Objectively speaking, what we want to know what it is eventually go away, and the way that we do that is by increasing solar, which would then kind of flip what the values are. So as these projects come online, then SREC prices should come down a little bit and ACPs should go up, reversing the situation, and then we'll get less ACPs. So the objective is to bring more solar online to do exactly that, if that makes sense from a market perspective.
Sort of, but the ACPs are still basically going to be pushed back into the ratepayers' rates, correct? Like they are now?
ACPs are being collected under current law or under this bill.
Okay, so regardless, the ratepayer still picks up the ACP cost. So, so I remember I introduced my crazy idea of making nuclear a tier 1 resource. So it's kind of a weird incentive not to change the way tier 1 is structured, correct?
I don't understand what you're saying. What are you asking?
Okay, so this requires tier 1 ACP revenue in order to make it work. Is that a fair statement so far? And when I had mentioned before, if you put nuclear into tier 1, that would really mess up all the RPS and credits inside the tier 1 structure. So
Yeah.
this really is sort of a quasi weird way to go. I'm just hypothesizing because I'm one session into learning energy. So I just
let me turn to Dwayne. Dwayne, did you want to address that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Delegate Morgan, I think the idea of this program is in order for us to award solar contracts, we would need ACP revenue to award those solar contracts. But the goal is to have no ACP revenue. So if there's no ACP revenue, which means that the goals in the RPS are being met, then there is no need to award more solar contracts through this program.
We spend down the ACPs.
Yeah, so how the program is structured with the idea that it knows that there's going to be a lot of ACP revenue in the short term. And so it's going to use that ACP revenue to build new generation. And then over time, there should be less and less ACP revenue, which reduces the need for this program. So this program will basically die out on its own. It does not need to continue into perpetuity. It's meant to ensure that the goals of the RPS are being met and that there's enough generation in the state to meet the goals of the RPS.
one of the SRECs die then also?
No, because these generators are still producing the SRECs and the utilities would still be procuring. So for instance, if you need 50% RECs, tier 1 RECs, and a portion of those are SRECs, the utility still has to procure those RECs every single year. And there's going to be generators online that are producing those RECs. What this is saying is we don't need any more RECs beyond that because we have enough generation in the state to meet those REC goals.
The objective is to use the ACPs to build solar generation to then wean us off of the need for ACP payments, or instead of making the choice of making the compliance payments, instead you just do the REC. You do the REC instead. So that's the objective, is to use the money we have, the money that we anticipate having coming in the next couple of years, use that to underpin more solar development, and then thus push down ACPs, and then not have any ACPs once we get on target.
Okay, I'll keep that.
I know it's complicated.
Thank you.
I know it's complicated. I don't see any other questions or Delegate Allen, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one or two. Am I freezing?
No.
I'm back. Okay.
You're back.
All right, looked like I was freezing. All right. I have one or two questions just for Steve. Number one, as amended, I was just looking through the original fiscal note of the bill. Does the bill as amended still hope to get us to a couple thousand more megawatts on the grid in generation?
Yes.
Wonderful. And that will, in theory, continue to drive down rates?
Yes. It puts
Awesome.
money. It does not raise rates from what they are, and it puts new generation across the state.
Fantastic. Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
All right. I hear a second.
Second.
I'm going to stop sharing so you can see.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion on the amendments?
Thank you.
Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Are you a late for or are you a opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so seeing one opposed, did I miss anybody else on the opposed? No, okay, on the bill as amended.
Bill's amended.
Second.
Great, okay. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
And two oppose. The record show Delegate Morgan and Delegate Anderson are opposed. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for some good work. We had about an hour's worth of work. So thank you all very, very much. See you on the floor.